The cold metal walls of the space station hummed softly in the night as the massive structure orbited a distant green and blue planet far away from Earth. Deep inside one of the smaller living quarters, a young human named Milo sat on the edge of his narrow bed. The room was small and plain, with just a bed, a desk, and a storage locker. A single round window showed the endless darkness of space and the faint glow of the planet below. Milo had been assigned to this station 6 months ago. It was a lonely job. The station was run mostly by alien crews from different worlds. Milo was the only human posted there, working as a mechanic and systems operator. He spent most of his days fixing broken machines, checking the oxygen systems, and making sure the engines stayed functional. He missed home terribly. Back on Earth, there had been busy cities, warm meals, and laughter with friends. Here, there was only silence and the distant chatter of alien languages he barely understood. The other station workers tolerated him but never truly spoke to him. They seemed to think humans were strange and fragile. Milo had grown used to the quiet. Every night he followed the same routine. He cleaned his tools, recorded the day's reports, ate a simple meal from a ration pack, and finally sat by the window to look at the planet below. That planet had a name he could not pronounce, so he just called it Orion. Its forests glowed faintly green under the light of 2 small moons, and sometimes Milo imagined there were people down there who would welcome him if he ever visited. That night, as he was preparing to sleep, something unusual happened. The metal door to his room slid open with a soft hiss. Milo frowned and sat up straight. No one ever visited him at this hour. He turned his head, expecting to see one of the alien supervisors checking in or maybe a maintenance alert. Instead, he froze. Standing in the doorway was a girl unlike anyone he had ever seen before. She looked young, about his age, with skin that shimmered pale blue under the dim station lights. Her long silver hair fell past her shoulders, and her eyes glowed softly like twin stars. Delicate patterns, almost like natural tattoos, ran across her cheeks and arms. She was wearing a flowing garment that looked like it had been torn in several places, as if she had been running or fighting. The girl looked directly at him, her expression filled with fear and desperation. Then, in clear and careful words, she spoke. "Can I sleep beside you tonight?" Human Milo's mouth went dry. He blinked several times, convinced he must be dreaming. This was the kind of thing that happened in strange space stories, not real life. What he said softly, barely believing his own voice. The girl stepped fully into the room and quickly closed the door behind her. She pressed her back against it as if she expected someone to come charging in at any moment. "Please," she said, her voice trembling. "I need to hide. They are chasing me. If they find me, I will be taken away. I do not want to go with them. Please, let me stay here, just for tonight." Milo's heart raced. "Who is chasing you?" he asked. Before she could answer, a deep metallic sound echoed down the hallway outside. Heavy footsteps. Several of them. Whoever it was, they were moving fast and coming closer. The girl's glowing eyes widened with panic. She ran to Milo and grabbed his arm with surprising strength. "They are here," she whispered urgently. "You must hide me now." Milo's mind spun. He had no idea what was happening, but he could see the fear in her face. He could also hear the footsteps growing louder. Without thinking too much, he acted. He pulled open the panel beneath his bed where he stored emergency supplies and pointed. "Get in there," he said quickly. The girl nodded and crawled into the cramped space, curling her slender form to fit. Milo slid the panel closed just as the door to his room opened again with a sharp hiss. Two tall armored figures stepped inside. They were alien guards, members of a species that towered over humans, with thick gray skin and helmets shaped like jagged stone. Their armor clanked loudly as they moved. Each carried a weapon shaped like a long spear with glowing edges. The leader spoke in a rough voice that Milo barely understood. It was a mix of the common trade language and their own tongue. "Human," the guard growled. "Did you see anyone pass through here?" Milo kept his face calm even though his heart hammered in his chest. "No," he said simply. "I've been alone all night." The guard stared at him for a long moment, as if trying to read his mind. Then he gestured to his partner, and the two of them began to search the room. They looked under the desk, opened the storage locker, and scanned the walls with their devices. Milo stood perfectly still, trying not to look at the bed where the girl was hiding. When one guard moved toward the bed, Milo forced himself to speak. "Is there a problem?" he asked in an even tone. "I have maintenance reports to finish. If there's danger on the station, I should be informed." The guard paused and turned back toward him. After a tense silence, the leader grunted and signaled for them to leave. "Stay in your room, human," the guard said. "Do not wander tonight." Then they left as quickly as they had entered, the door sliding shut behind them. Milo let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His hands were shaking. He crouched down and slid open the panel under the bed. The alien girl crawled out, her silver hair falling around her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "If they had taken me, it would have been the end." Milo sat on the edge of the bed, trying to process everything. "Who are you?" he asked carefully. The girl sat beside him, clutching her torn garment tightly. "My name is Nira," she said. "I am, or was, part of the ruling family on the planet below. My father commands many tribes, and he plans to start a war. I refused to join him, so he sent his hunters to capture me. If they take me back, he will force me to lead his army." Milo stared at her in disbelief. A royal fugitive hiding under his bed was not something he had ever imagined. "Why come here?" he asked. "Why not hide on your planet? They would find me quickly," Nira replied. "Your kind, humans, are neutral here. My people cannot move openly on this station without drawing attention. I thought maybe a human would help me." She looked at him with wide, hopeful eyes. "Was I wrong to trust you?" she asked softly. Milo rubbed his face. He knew the smart thing would be to report her immediately. If the station supervisors discovered he was hiding her, he could be imprisoned or sent back to Earth in disgrace. But he also remembered the fear in her voice and the cold, menacing way the guards had searched his room. "No," he said finally. "You weren't wrong." Nira's eyes filled with relief. She reached out and lightly touched his hand. "Thank you, Milo," she said. "I do not have many friends left." The sound of distant alarms suddenly echoed through the station. A mechanical voice announced in several languages that a security alert had been declared. Milo's stomach sank. The search for Nero was far from over. "We can't stay here," he said quickly. "If they search again, they'll find you." "Where can we go?" Nira asked, fear returning to her voice. Milo thought fast. He knew the station better than most, especially the old maintenance tunnels and access shafts that few people used. If they moved carefully, they might be able to slip away unnoticed. "There's a hidden passage in the storage bay," he said. "If we can reach it, we can get you off this level." "Off this level and to where?" Nira asked. Milo didn't have a full plan yet. All he knew was that they needed to stay ahead of the hunters. Somewhere safe, he promised. Nira nodded, trusting him completely. As they prepared to leave, Milo handed her a spare utility cloak to cover her glowing markings. Together, they slipped out of the room into the dimly lit corridor. The station felt different now, filled with tension and danger. Patrols marched past, and alarms pulsed like a heartbeat through the walls. Milo and Nira moved silently, their footsteps barely making a sound. Each turn of the corridor brought new risks. At one point, they had to duck behind a stack of crates as a pair of guards stomped past, their voices harsh and guttural. Finally, they reached the storage bay. Milo pried open a rusted panel on the far wall, revealing a narrow tunnel barely wide enough for one person. "Go," he whispered. Nira crawled inside first, and Milo followed, sealing the panel behind them. In the darkness of the tunnel, only Nira's faintly glowing eyes provided light. As they crawled forward, Milo realized how strange his night had become. Just hours ago, he had been lonely and bored, wishing for some excitement. Now, he was helping a fugitive alien princess escape from her father's hunters, with no idea what awaited them. For the first time since leaving Earth, Milo felt alive. He didn't know where this path would lead, but he knew one thing for certain. He was not going to let Nira be taken. The narrow maintenance tunnel was dark and silent except for the soft scraping of knees and hands against metal. Milo moved carefully behind Nira, who crawled ahead with her glowing eyes lighting their way. The cramped passage was barely wide enough for them, and the stale air smelled of rust and oil. Milo's heart still pounded from the close call in his room. He kept glancing back over his shoulder even though the panel was sealed behind them. He half expected the armored hunters to burst through at any moment. Nira whispered softly as they crawled. "Where does this tunnel lead?" Milo spoke in a low voice, trying not to let it echo. "There's an old storage chamber at the end. Hardly anyone goes there. From there, we can move between different levels of the station without being seen." "Will it be safe?" she asked. "For a little while," Milo said honestly. "But if the hunters know you are on the station, they will search everywhere." Nira nodded, her silver hair brushing the sides of the tunnel. She moved silently, but Milo could tell she was afraid. Every so often, her shoulders trembled slightly. Finally, they reached the end of the tunnel. Milo pushed open a circular hatch and peeked out. The storage chamber beyond was dark and dusty, filled with old crates and broken machines. It smelled like metal and stale air. No guards were in sight. "Clear," Milo whispered. He helped Nira climb out first, then followed, closing the hatch behind them. Nira immediately wrapped the cloak around herself to hide her glowing markings. For a moment, they both sat quietly among the crates, catching their breath. Nira finally broke the silence. "Thank you for helping me," she said softly. "I know this puts you in great danger." Milo shook his head. "I couldn't just let them take you. Those guards didn't look like they were bringing you home to keep you safe." "They were not," Nira said, her voice tight. "If they had taken me back to my father, he would have forced me to lead his armies. And if I refused, he might have." She stopped herself and looked down, unwilling to finish the sentence. Milo didn't push her to continue. He could already guess it would have been something terrible. He leaned back against a crate and asked, "Why does your father want to start a war?" Nira's glowing eyes dimmed slightly as she spoke. "My father rules many tribes on the planet below. For years, the tribes have fought each other, wasting lives and resources. My father believes that the only way to unite them is to fight an outside enemy. He believes if all tribes share a common enemy, they will stand together under his rule. Milo frowned. And that enemy would be humans. Nira nodded slowly. Yes. Your colonies are spreading near our space. My father plans to attack before humans grow too strong. If he wins, he will become a hero to the tribes. But it will start a war that could destroy both our worlds. Milo stared at her, stunned. He had known there were tensions between alien species and humans, but he hadn't realized how close they were to open conflict. So you ran away to stop him? Milo asked. I tried to convince him to find peace, Nira said, her voice trembling with emotion. He would not listen. He called me weak and foolish. When I continued to speak against him, he declared me a traitor. That is when he sent the hunters. Her hands clenched into fists as she continued. If I can reach the Temple of Truth deep in the forests of my planet, I can claim the Relic of Balance. It is an ancient symbol of leadership. With it, I can challenge my father's right to rule. The tribes will listen to me then. Milo absorbed her words slowly. It sounded like something out of an old legend, but the determination in her voice was real. You really believe this relic can stop a war? He asked. I do, she said firmly. But I cannot reach the temple alone. The forests are dangerous, and my father's hunters will follow me. Milo thought for a long moment. He was only a mechanic, not a warrior or a leader. Helping Nero meant defying the entire station and possibly his own superiors. But if what she said was true, staying out of it could mean watching countless humans die in a war they didn't start. He finally met her gaze and said, "Then I'll help you get there." Nira's eyes widened. You would risk so much for someone you just met? Milo shrugged with a small smile. You trusted me first. Besides, if your father attacks humans, I'll be caught in the middle anyway. I'd rather try to stop it before it begins. Nira's lips curved into a small but genuine smile. Then we are allies, she said softly. Thank you, Milo. The moment was interrupted by the distant sound of heavy footsteps and voices echoing through the station's corridors. Milo's head snapped up. They're searching this level now, he said urgently. We need to keep moving. He scanned the room and spotted an old service door at the back. It was dusty and half broken, but Milo knew it led to a network of maintenance shafts. This way, he said, grabbing Nira's hand. They slipped through the door and into the shafts just as the storage chamber door slammed open behind them. The hunters had arrived. The maintenance shafts were narrow and twisting, a maze of pipes and cables. Milo moved quickly, relying on his knowledge of the station's layout. Nira followed close behind, her cloak catching on sharp metal edges as they ran. At one point, they reached a dead end. Milo cursed under his breath, then pried open a ventilation grate to reveal a small vertical tunnel. Climb, he said. Nero looked up at the dark shaft, her glowing eyes wide with fear. I am not strong enough, she said. Yes, you are, Milo insisted. He climbed first, then reached down to help her. Slowly, they made their way upward, muscles straining with effort. Halfway up, they heard the sound of metal scraping below. The hunters had entered the shaft. Hurry, Milo whispered urgently. They climbed faster, their breathing loud in the narrow space. Finally, they reached another grate and pushed it open, tumbling out into a deserted corridor. Milo quickly sealed the grate behind them. They ran until they reached an old docking bay that had been closed for years. The bay was dusty and filled with abandoned equipment, but it offered a place to rest. As they sat among the shadows, catching their breath, Nira turned to Milo with a serious expression. "There is something you must understand," she said. "If we are caught, they will not just punish me. They will punish you as well. My father's forces do not respect your station's rules." Milo nodded. "I figured as much. But we can't turn back now." Nira studied him for a moment. "Why are you so willing to help me?" Milo thought about it. Back on Earth, people always say humans are weak compared to alien species. They think we survive only by luck or by hiding behind stronger allies. But I don't believe that. I think humans can make a difference, even if we're small and outnumbered. Nira tilted her head slightly. "You are different from the others I have met. Most humans I have seen came to my planet as traders or diplomats. They stayed distant. You care." Milo gave a small laugh. "I'm a mechanic, not a diplomat. I fix broken things. Right now, your world is about to break. Maybe I can help fix that too." Before Nira could respond, a low rumble shook the floor beneath them. The lights flickered. "They are closing off sections of the station," Milo realized. "We don't have much time. We need to reach a shuttle." Nira's eyes lit with hope. "If we can get to the surface, I can guide us through the forests. The temple is hidden deep within them." Milo checked a nearby terminal, using his access codes to scan for patrols. "There's a small cargo shuttle in Bay 9, he said. "It's old, but it should still work." The journey to Bay 9 was tense. They moved silently through dark corridors, avoiding patrols. Twice, they had to hide inside empty containers as hunters passed by. Each time, Nira gripped Milo's hand tightly, her fear almost overwhelming. Finally, they reached Bay 9. The cargo shuttle sat on the landing pad, its hull covered in scratches and dents. Milo quickly powered it up, his hands moving with practiced skill. As the engines roared to life, alarms blared throughout the station. "They know," Nira said, her voice trembling. "Then we'll just have to be faster," Milo replied. The shuttle lifted off just as a squad of hunters burst into the bay. Blaster fire streaked past them, but Milo pushed the throttle to maximum. The shuttle shot out into space, leaving the station behind. Through the viewport, the planet of Orion grew larger. Nira stared at it, her expression a mix of fear and determination. "We made it off the station," Milo said, breathing hard. "But the hard part is still ahead." Nira nodded. "Once we land, the true journey begins." Milo glanced at her, then back at the planet. He didn't know what awaited them down there, but one thing was clear. There was no turning back now. As the shuttle entered the planet's atmosphere, Milo tightened his grip on the controls. Somewhere below, in the glowing forests of Orion, lay the temple that could stop a war. And together, they would reach it or die trying. The cargo shuttle rattled and shook as it descended through the thick clouds of Orion's atmosphere. The glow of the twin moons faded behind the swirling mist, and below, the dark green forest stretched endlessly in every direction. Milo gripped the control handles tightly, fighting to keep the shuttle steady. The old machine groaned with every movement, and several warning lights blinked angrily on the console. "Is it supposed to sound like this?" Nira asked, her voice filled with worry as she held onto the edge of her seat. "It's old and rusty," Milo said, forcing calm into his voice. "But it will hold together long enough to land. Hopefully." He guided the shuttle down toward a narrow clearing between towering trees. The planet's surface rose up to meet them, and the shuttle's landing struts groaned as they touched the soft ground. Steam hissed from vents, and for a moment, silence returned. Milo let out a deep breath of relief. "We're down," he said. "No one followed us, yet." Nero peered out of the viewport. The forests of Orion were unlike anything Milo had ever seen. The trees were massive, their trunks wide as buildings, with leaves that glowed faintly green and gold. Strange flying creatures drifted between the branches, their wings shimmering like glass. The air was thick and humid, carrying the scents of unknown flowers and moss. "This is my home," Nero whispered softly, almost to herself. "I grew up among these forests." Milo opened the shuttle's hatch, and a rush of warm, damp air flooded in. He stepped out carefully, boots sinking slightly into the mossy ground. The sounds of the forest surrounded him, distant calls of unseen animals, the rustle of leaves, and the gentle hum of strange insects. It felt alive in a way that space stations never could. Nero followed, pulling her cloak tighter around her to hide her glowing markings. She crouched low and touched the ground with her hand, closing her eyes briefly. "They will search for us," she said. "The hunters will not stop. We must keep moving." Milo nodded. "Which way to the temple?" Nero pointed toward a distant ridge barely visible through the mist. "Beyond those mountains lies the Temple of Truth. It is hidden deep inside the sacred forest. But the journey will not be easy. There are wild creatures, dangerous terrain, and patrols loyal to my father." Milo adjusted the pack of supplies he had brought from the shuttle. "Then we better get going before they land behind us." As they began their journey, Nero moved with the grace of someone who knew the forest well. She navigated narrow trails and hidden paths, while Milo followed carefully, trying to avoid slipping on the moss-covered rocks. The deeper they went, the darker and denser the forest became. Strange glowing plants lit their way, casting shifting patterns of light and shadow. After an hour of travel, they reached a wide stream. The water shimmered with an otherworldly blue glow, and strange fish-like creatures swam beneath the surface. A fallen tree served as a natural bridge. "We cross here," Nero said. "But be careful. The water is safe to touch, but some of the creatures are not." Milo balanced himself as he crossed behind her, trying not to look down. Halfway across, a low, distant rumble echoed through the trees. Nero froze, her eyes wide. "What was that?" Milo asked quietly. "Hunters," she whispered. "They are near." As if to confirm her words, a faint light appeared through the trees behind them. "Moving fast." Milo's heart raced. "How did they find us so quickly?" he asked. "They have trackers," Nero said urgently. "We must hide." They ran along the stream until they reached a cluster of massive roots twisting together to form a hollow space. Nero ducked inside, pulling Milo with her. They crouched in the shadows, holding their breath. Moments later, several figures emerged from the forest. The hunters were even more fearsome here than they had been on the station. Their gray skin gleamed under the moonlight, and their heavy armor blended with the forest shadows. Each carried a glowing spear and a scanning device. The leader growled something in a guttural language. The others spread out, searching the area carefully. One stopped near the stream and crouched, touching the ground. Its scanning device beeped loudly. "They know we were here," Milo whispered. Nero gripped his arm tightly. "Stay silent." The hunters moved closer, their footsteps heavy on the moss. One of them turned directly toward their hiding spot, lifting its spear. Milo's pulse pounded in his ears. He reached for a metal tool from his pack, ready to fight if necessary. But before the hunter could advance, a loud screech echoed from the trees above. A massive winged creature swooped down, scattering leaves and branches. The hunters shouted in surprise and turned their weapons upward. "Now," Nero whispered. They slipped out of the hiding place and sprinted through the undergrowth while the hunters were distracted. Branches whipped against Milo's face as he ran, and roots threatened to trip him at every step, but he didn't stop. After several minutes, they reached a steep hill covered in glowing moss. Milo gasped for breath, leaning against a tree. "Did we lose them?" he asked. Nero listened carefully, her sharp ears twitching. "For now. But they will not give up." Milo sat down briefly to catch his breath. His legs ached, and sweat dripped down his face. "This forest is like a maze." "It is," Nero said, kneeling beside him. "But that is to our advantage. I know paths they do not." As they rested, Nero took a small round device from her cloak and pressed it to the ground. A faint holographic map appeared, showing the forest and surrounding mountains. She pointed to a glowing dot in the center. "This is the temple," she explained. "We are here." She indicated a spot far to the south. "It will take at least 2 days to reach it if we move quickly." Milo studied the map. 2 days while being hunted. Sounds fun. Nero gave him a small, tired smile. "I do not remember the word fun meaning this." Their brief rest ended when a sudden howl echoed through the forest. It was not a hunter's voice but something far more primal. Nero's face went pale. "Forest beast," she whispered. "We must move." They hurried onward, the sounds of pursuit growing louder behind them. The forest seemed alive with danger. Strange glowing insects buzzed around their heads. Vines hung low like ropes, and distant shapes moved just out of sight. As darkness fell, they found a small cave hidden behind a waterfall. The water sparkled like liquid light, and the cave was dry and warm inside. Milo used a portable heat source to create a small glow for warmth. Nero sat across from him, wrapping her cloak tightly around herself. She looked exhausted, her silver hair tangled and damp. "You should rest," Milo said gently. "I'll keep watch." "You need rest too," she replied. "But thank you." For a while, they sat in silence, listening to the waterfall's steady rhythm. Then Nero spoke softly. "When I asked to stay in your room that first night, I was not only afraid," she admitted. "I trusted you. Humans are different from my people. You see the world with open hearts. That is why I came to you." Milo looked at her thoughtfully. "Back on Earth, humans argue and fight too. We're not perfect." "Perhaps," Nero said. "But you also build bridges instead of walls. My father sees only enemies. You saw someone who needed help." Milo didn't know what to say, so he just nodded. Their quiet moment ended when distant shouts echoed through the forest. The hunters were closing in again. "Time to move," Milo said, standing quickly. They left the cave before dawn, traveling through dense undergrowth and climbing rocky slopes. The temple's mountains loomed closer now, their peaks glowing faintly under the morning light. By midday, they reached a narrow canyon. Nero paused at the edge. "This path is dangerous," she warned. "But it is the fastest way." Milo peered down. The canyon floor was covered in mist, hiding sharp rocks below. A thin rope bridge swayed in the wind. "Well, no other choice," he said. As they crossed, the hunters appeared behind them, emerging from the trees like shadows. Shouts rang out, and spears of energy flew past them, striking the ropes. "Hurry," Milo yelled. They ran across the swaying bridge as it shook violently. Nero leaped to the far side just as Milo stumbled. She grabbed his arm and pulled him up, saving him from falling. The hunters tried to follow, but Milo cut the ropes with a sharp blade. The bridge collapsed, sending 2 hunters plunging into the mist below. The rest roared in anger. "We bought some time," Milo said, breathing hard. As night approached, they finally reached a high ridge overlooking the sacred forest. From there, the Temple of Truth was visible in the distance, its towering structure glowing softly among the trees. "There it is," Nira said, awe in her voice. "We are close." Milo stared at it, feeling both relief and fear. "It looks like something out of a dream." Nira turned to him, her expression serious. "Tomorrow, we reach the temple. But my father's elite hunters will be waiting. The hardest part is still ahead." Milo nodded, determination in his eyes. "Then we'll face it together." That night, as they camped beneath the glowing trees, Milo lay awake, listening to the forest sounds. He knew they had survived only through luck and Nira's knowledge. Tomorrow would decide everything, whether they could stop a war or whether their journey would end in failure. Far away, in the dark shadows of the forest, the hunters prepared for their final pursuit. Their leader raised his glowing spear and roared to the sky, vowing to capture Nira before she reached the temple. The chase was far from over. Morning came slowly to the sacred forest, the golden light of Orion's twin suns filtering through the towering leaves above. The trees glowed softly, their strange patterns pulsing like a heartbeat. Milo sat near the small campfire he had built, sharpening a makeshift spear he had carved from a sturdy branch. The long night had left him tired, but he refused to rest. Today was the day they would reach the temple, and he knew danger would be waiting. Nira knelt nearby, tracing symbols in the dirt with her finger. Her silver hair caught the sunlight, glowing faintly. She seemed calmer now, but her glowing eyes held a deep determination. "We are very close," she said quietly. "Once we reach the temple, the final trials will begin." Milo frowned. "These trials you mentioned before, what exactly are they?" Nero looked at him, her face serious. "The Temple of Truth was built long ago by my people's ancestors. It is protected by tests of courage, wisdom, and strength. Only one who truly understands the balance between power and peace can pass. If I succeed, the relic will accept me as the rightful leader. If I fail, the temple will cast me out." "And what about me?" Milo asked. "Can I help?" "You cannot take the trials," Nira said gently. "They are for me alone. But your presence still matters. The temple will sense our bond, and it will judge me partly by the choices I have made, including trusting you." Milo felt the weight of her words. He wasn't just a companion now. In a way, the fate of her people and the future of the galaxy rested on their journey together. As they packed their few supplies, a sudden rustle in the trees made both of them freeze. Milo gripped his spear tightly. "Hunters," Nero whispered. Milo scanned the forest. At first, he saw nothing. Then shadows moved between the glowing trunks. The hunters had found them again. "Run," Milo said urgently. They sprinted through the forest, dodging between roots and branches. Behind them, guttural shouts echoed as the hunters gave chase. Spears of energy hissed through the air, striking trees and sending shards of bark flying. Milo's lungs burned as they ran uphill toward the ridge. Nero led the way, her movements swift and graceful. She seemed to know every hidden path and narrow passage. At the top of the ridge, the forest opened into a wide clearing. There, in the distance, stood the Temple of Truth. Milo stopped, awestruck. The temple was enormous, carved from white stone that shimmered with inner light. It rose like a mountain, its walls covered in ancient runes that pulsed faintly. Vines wrapped around its pillars, and waterfalls cascaded down its sides, creating a soft, steady roar. "It's beautiful," Milo breathed. Nira's eyes glimmered with emotion. This is where it all began. And where it must be decided. Their moment of awe ended when the hunters burst into the clearing behind them. "Go!" Milo shouted. They raced down the slope toward the temple entrance. Milo turned once, hurling his spear at a pursuing hunter. It struck the creature's armor and knocked it back, buying them precious seconds. At last, they reached the grand stone steps leading up to the temple doors. As they climbed, the ground trembled beneath their feet, and a deep, humming sound filled the air. The temple was awakening. Nira paused at the massive doorway, placing her hands on the engraved runes. "The temple recognizes me," she said breathlessly. "It knows why I have come." The doors opened slowly, releasing a cool rush of air that smelled of ancient earth and strange flowers. The interior glowed softly, lit by floating crystals. Milo glanced behind them. The hunters were charging up the steps. "Inside, now," he urged. They dashed into the temple. The doors swung shut behind them, sealing with a deep echo. For a moment, silence fell. The chamber they entered was vast, with high ceilings and towering statues of ancient leaders. Symbols glowed on the floor, forming intricate patterns. At the far end stood a circular platform surrounded by water, its surface perfectly still. "This is the first trial," Nira said. "The trial of courage." Before Milo could ask what that meant, the water began to churn. From its depths rose a massive guardian made of living stone. It had no face, only a smooth head and powerful arms that ended in jagged claws. The creature roared, shaking the chamber. Milo instinctively stepped forward, but Nira stopped him. "I must face it alone." The guardian charged. Nira moved quickly, dodging its heavy strikes. She leaped onto its arm, climbing toward its head. The creature swung wildly, trying to shake her off. Milo watched, his heart pounding, wanting to help but knowing he couldn't interfere. With a cry of determination, Nira reached the guardian's head and pressed her palm to a glowing symbol etched there. The creature froze, then slowly sank back into the water, disappearing completely. Nira dropped to the ground, breathing hard. "The first trial is complete." Milo ran to her side. "You did it? That was incredible." She smiled faintly. "It is only the beginning." They moved to the next chamber, which was smaller and filled with mirrors. Dozens of reflections of Nira appeared on every side. Each reflection spoke in her voice, whispering doubts and lies. "This is the trial of wisdom," Nira said quietly. "I must see the truth among the illusions." The reflections taunted her, telling her she was unworthy, that her father was right, that Milo would betray her. Milo could only watch as Nira closed her eyes, blocking out the voices. Slowly, she reached forward and touched one mirror. It dissolved, leaving only a single clear path ahead. "The truth is found," she said, her voice steady. They passed through into the final chamber. It was a circular room with a raised platform in the center. Floating above the platform was the relic of balance, a glowing crystal shaped like a teardrop. Its light filled the room with warmth. "This is it," Milo said in awe. Nira stepped forward, but a deep, harsh laugh echoed behind them. The temple doors burst open, and her father's elite hunters stormed inside. At their head was a towering figure clad in dark armor, Nira's father himself. "So," he boomed, his voice echoing. "My wayward daughter comes to claim what is mine." Nira's eyes blazed with defiance. "It was never yours, father. The relic belongs to the true leader of our people, one who seeks unity through peace, not war." Her father sneered. "Peace is weakness. Only strength can rule." He raised his weapon, and the hunters advanced. Milo stepped protectively in front of Nira, gripping a broken spear he had grabbed from the floor. "You'll have to go through me first," he said firmly. The hunters charged. The battle was chaotic and fierce. Milo fought with every ounce of strength, dodging blows and striking where he could. Though he was smaller and less powerful, his speed and quick thinking gave him an advantage. He used the environment to his favor, knocking over pillars and using broken pieces of stone as weapons. Nira, meanwhile, focused on reaching the relic. As her father battled his way toward her, she leaped onto the platform. The relic's light flared, surrounding her in a protective glow. Her father roared in anger. "You are not worthy." "I am," Nira said, her voice strong. "Because I fight not for power, but for harmony." The relic pulsed with energy, sending out a wave of light that knocked the hunters to the ground. Milo shielded his eyes as the brightness filled the chamber. When the light faded, the hunters lay motionless, defeated. Nira's father struggled to his knees, his armor cracked. "The relic has chosen," Nira declared. "The tribes will follow me now." Her father glared at her, then at Milo. For a moment, Milo thought he might attack again. But instead, the older warrior bowed his head in defeat. "You have won, daughter," he said bitterly. "But remember, strength still has its place." Nira nodded solemnly. "Yes, father. But strength must serve peace, not destroy it." As the hunters retreated, Milo finally allowed himself to breathe. He was bruised and exhausted, but alive. "You did it," he said, smiling at Nira. "You actually did it?" "No," she said, smiling back. "We did it." Together, they approached the relic. Nira placed her hands on it, and the temple walls glowed brightly. Outside, the forests echoed with a deep, resonant hum as the planet itself seemed to acknowledge her victory. Milo gazed at the sight, amazed. "What happens now?" Nira said, "the tribes will gather. With the relic's power, I will call for peace. My father's war will end before it begins." Milo looked around at the ancient temple, feeling the weight of their journey. They had faced countless dangers, yet they had reached this moment together. But deep down, he knew their mission was not over. The hardest task still lay ahead, convincing an entire world to follow a new path. As they left the temple, Milo glanced at Nira. She walked with her head high, the relic glowing softly in her hands. Whatever came next, he knew they would face it side by side. Far behind them, in the shadowed forest, a single surviving hunter watched silently, then vanished into the trees. The struggle for peace was not finished yet. The path down from the Temple of Truth was silent except for the soft sound of falling water and the distant hum of the ancient structure behind them. Milo walked carefully beside Nira as she carried the relic close to her chest. The crystal glowed with a gentle white light, casting shifting patterns across the forest floor. They had both been through so much to reach this moment. Milo's clothes were torn, and bruises covered his arms and legs, while Nira still bore faint marks from her battle with the temple guardian and her father's hunters. Yet her steps were strong, and her head was held high. For a while, neither of them spoke. They were both thinking about what had just happened inside the temple. Milo finally broke the silence. "What now?" he asked quietly. "Your people are still divided. Even if your father surrendered to you, will everyone listen?" Nira's glowing eyes flickered as she considered his words. "The relic gives me the right to speak as a chosen leader, but that alone will not be enough. Many will doubt me. Some will fear me. And some will still want war." She looked at him with a mixture of determination and worry. "We must reach the gathering grounds before the other tribes make their decision. If I speak there with the relic in my hands, we have a chance to unite them." Milo nodded, gripping the short spear he had taken from one of the defeated hunters. "Then we move fast. If those hunters who fled warn the others, they might set a trap." They traveled through the forest, keeping close to hidden paths Nira knew well. Strange glowing plants lit their way as night fell, their soft blue light reflecting in the streams that wound between the roots of ancient trees. Milo had seen many alien landscapes since leaving Earth, but this forest felt different. It seemed alive, almost as if the world itself was listening to their journey. When they finally stopped to rest, Milo built a small fire while Nira examined the relic. The crystal floated slightly above her palm, spinning slowly. Its light pulsed like a heartbeat. "It is beautiful," Milo said, sitting beside her. "It is more than beauty," Nira replied. "This relic connects to the very essence of my people. It holds the memories of the ancestors, their hopes, their mistakes, and their dreams. With it, I can show the tribes a vision of what we could become, a future without endless war." Milo stared into the fire. "Back on Earth, we've had our share of wars too. People fighting over power, land, or resources. Sometimes it feels like conflict never truly ends." He glanced at her. "Maybe if humans had something like that relic, things would be different." Nira smiled faintly. "Perhaps humans do not need a relic. Perhaps you simply need people willing to stand for peace, like you." Her words warmed him more than the fire. For a moment, the weight of their dangerous mission felt lighter. Before dawn, they were on the move again. The forest began to thin as they approached the open plains that surrounded the gathering grounds. In the distance, Milo could see the towering spires of stone where the tribes traditionally met. Thousands would be there, watching and waiting. As they neared the edge of the plains, Nira suddenly stopped and crouched low. Milo followed her lead, peering through the tall grass. A large group of armed warriors was gathered near the base of the stone spires. They wore the markings of her father's most loyal faction. Among them stood the surviving hunter who had fled the temple battle. "They are preparing for us," Nira said grimly. "My father's forces do not accept defeat." Milo tightened his grip on his spear. "So we fight our way through?" Nira shook her head. "If we attack them now, others will see only violence. That will destroy everything we have worked for. We must show them another way." She stood tall, stepping out of the grass and walking toward the warriors without fear. Milo hesitated for only a moment before following. The warriors raised their weapons, but Nira's voice rang out across the plains, strong and clear. "Lower your arms," she commanded. "The relic has spoken. The Temple of Truth has chosen me to lead." The warriors hesitated. The hunter who had fled pointed at Milo. "You bring a human into our sacred grounds. He is an outsider, unworthy of this place." Milo's heart pounded, but he stood firm. Nero lifted the relic high above her head. Its light flared, washing over the warriors. Images appeared in the air, visions of the temple trials, the battle with the guardian, and her father bowing in defeat. "See the truth with your own eyes," Nira declared. "I do not come to claim power for myself. I come to bring balance and end the endless cycle of war. This human has walked beside me, risking his life when no one else would. He is proof that trust between our people is possible." The warriors murmured among themselves, clearly shaken by the visions. Finally, an older warrior stepped forward and lowered his weapon. "If the relic chooses you, we will follow. But the other tribes must see for themselves." Nira nodded. "Then let us go to the gathering grounds together. Let all witness the truth." Under heavy guard but without further conflict, they continued toward the central spire. The closer they came, the more tribes gathered. Different groups with different colors and banners filled the area, their voices rising in a storm of arguments. When Nira stepped onto the central platform, the noise fell silent. Thousands of glowing eyes turned toward her. Milo stood at her side, feeling very small under the weight of their stares. Nira raised the relic, and its light spread across the crowd. "My people," she began, her voice carrying far. "For generations, we have fought each other and those beyond our world. We have been taught that only strength matters, that unity must be forged through conquest. But I have seen another path. I have walked with someone who was once called an enemy, and together we overcame trials that no one could face alone." The relic pulsed, projecting more visions. The tribes saw Milo saving Nira from the hunters, guiding her through the forest, and standing against her father's warriors. "This human," Nira continued, "chose to protect me, even when he had no reason to. Through him, I learned that peace is not weakness. It is courage." The crowd murmured again, this time softer, more thoughtful. At that moment, her father stepped forward from the gathering. He still wore his damaged armor, but his head was bowed. "My daughter speaks true," he said, his voice heavy. "I have seen her strength and her vision. Though I once sought war, I now yield to her wisdom. Follow her, and a new era may begin." Gasps spread through the tribes. The sight of the old leader bowing before his daughter broke centuries of tradition. Nero lowered the relic and extended her hand to her father. Together, they faced the crowd. "Let us end this cycle," she declared. "Let us turn our strength toward rebuilding instead of destroying." One by one, the leaders of the other tribes stepped forward, placing their weapons on the ground as a sign of agreement. The tension slowly dissolved into cheers and chants of unity. Milo exhaled in relief. The war had been stopped before it could begin. Later that evening, as the sun set and the tribes celebrated their new alliance, Milo stood alone at the edge of the gathering grounds. He watched the glowing lights of the celebration and felt a strange mixture of pride and sadness. "You look thoughtful," Nira said softly, approaching him. "I was just thinking," Milo replied, "about how different this world is from mine. And how lucky I was to be part of this." Nira smiled warmly. "You were more than a part of it, Milo. Without you, none of this would have been possible." She hesitated, then continued. "When I first came to you that night, I was afraid. I asked if I could sleep beside you because I needed safety. But now I ask again, not from fear, but because I want to share this moment with the one who believed in me." Milo's chest tightened with emotion. He smiled back. "I'd like that." As the night grew quiet, they sat together near the fire, the relic resting between them. It glowed softly, a symbol of hope and the bond they had forged. High above, the stars shone over a world no longer at war. For the first time, Milo felt that peace was truly possible not just for Neera's people, but for all species across the galaxy. He looked at her, and she looked back at him, and without words, they both knew their journey was only the beginning.